Let's talk about genetics today. Life is fundamentally determined by fate. Today, we will talk about this part of destiny.
Fate, simply put, it's when you were born that decided everything.
That is, what you got from your parents, such as property,
Status, family, environment. And your body. This is your life.
your body. From a genetic perspective,
Half from your father, half from your mother. No part comes from you. Then the various talents contained in your body.
talent or talent. In theory, it all comes from them, inherited from you.
So today, we will talk about what is inherited.
What are not hereditary,
From the conclusion,
acquired attributes of people.
it's because of your parents' efforts.
Got something.
Basically, it is not hereditary. For example, knowledge and skills are not inherited.
People's innate attributes are basically inherited, such as height, weight, appearance, IQ, personality.
These talents, you don't need to work hard. You can get it from your parents. But these attributes will have their own heritability.
So how can we better obtain the inheritance of excellent genes?
That depends on whether they have good genes or not. Then it must be hereditary. But your parents did it together. The result is that they each take half.
For example, the same characteristics. Your father's gene is better.
Mother's but words. You have half the chance of getting this good gene. But if your parents are good, you will definitely get it.
Heritability. Even though this gene has been inherited, but he has a certain probability of being affected by the environment. Changes happened. All genetics are like this. He will be affected by the environment and change. The magnitude of the influence of the environment is the heritability.
Let me give you an analogy. Is among all our characteristics, the highest heritability is fingerprints.
The heritability of fingerprints reaches 98%. In other words, your fingerprint, 98% is inherited.
But it doesn't mean that you will be the same as your parents.
It was after they mixed. Basically, it is 98% determined by this mixed gene.
Only 2% is caused by environmental impacts.
So your fingerprint,
Will be the same as you should have been.
the fingerprint I inherited, is slightly different. As you grow,
This fingerprint, there will also be certain changes. But most of the changes come from when mother was still pregnant, when you were in his belly.
caused by environmental influences.
But it is precisely because of the influence of these 2% environmental factors that identical twins,
Even if the DNA is exactly the same,
their fingerprints are also different.
it cannot be in the same location.
Its location is slightly different. There will be some changes in the fingerprint. Well, there is a particularly famous case about fingerprints. It was in 2003. Malaysia alert places in suburbs of Kuala Lumpur. Stop a truck. 166 kilograms of marijuana found in car.
And 1.7 kilograms of opium.
This is a felony punishable by death in Malaysia.
The driver's name is Raj. The police took this Raj to his residence.
Search further. See if he has more of this drug at home.
It turned out to be at his home. But I found someone. This person looks exactly like Raj, is his twin's brother.
Then the police took both of them to the police station. As a result, the police couldn't tell the difference after I went to the police station.
Who's driving the truck? Who's at home? So like identical twins. Because when the police were arresting Raj,
No fingerprints taken,
so helpless, the judge had no choice but to acquit both men.
because according to legal principles, it can only punish guilty people. But you don't know which of them is guilty.
You can't sanction them both at will. No one has admitted guilt. There's no point in pleading guilty.
You must be able to objectively distinguish.
Which of them ISHWO?
What's more, it's a serious crime that can be punished by death. It can never be wrong.
So we can only be acquitted.
So now, no matter which country, the police are extremely cautious. Take fingerprints upon arrival.
Whether you have a twin brother or not.
Of course, identical twins.
In fact, except for fingerprints, they are different.
There are many other details that are different. It's just that we don't notice.
For example, their irises are different.
There are also veins that are different.
Now whether it's the police station,
Bank or ID card login.
there are mainly three ways. Fingerprint iris vein, Just log into at least one of these three.
Otherwise, you will not be able to log in with your ID card.
So why is DNA thesamy? There will be so many different places on the body. It's because of our bodies, not entirely determined by DNA.
There is another part.
Changes due to environmental influences.
Then the one with the highest heritability is fingerprints.
The next thing with a very high heritability. It's IQ. The heritability of IQ can reach 80%. In fact, the heritability of IQ. More accurately, it should be a changing value.
It's 54% to 80, all the numbers mentioned today. Both from two books.
A book called Don't Say It. It's Too Cruel to Be True. This book, the famous Japanese best-selling author Akira Tachibana.
There is another one. It's the truth about heredity that 90% of Japanese do not know. Author of book. It is the well-known Japanese behavioral geneticist Juko Ando. These two authors also once authored a book. Luck is Hereditary.
That first book, by the best-selling author. What he wrote is well-founded, actually.
He is also based on many authoritative data in the world. Came to write this book.
It is about
this society should give more support to people with bad genes.
Juko Ando is mainly talking about, let's just say that in fact, a person's entire life is determined by genes.
Efforts to decide have no effect.
It is analyzed from a complete genetic perspective. And how did you get this heritability? In fact, it was obtained through the twin experiment.
What is the Gemini experiment? Identical twins and fraternal twins.
Theoretically, this kind of experiment is actually done using human clones.
But human cloning is not allowed.
So we can only use natural cloning, just twins. Let's just say the heritability of IQ is 50% to 80%. I said it is a changing value. It's because of the heritability of IQ. Is that as age increases, ever increasing, will become smaller and smaller. In fact, apart from IQ,
all intrinsic factors
just looks different. In addition to factors such as body structure, character intelligence, all with increasing age, more and more closely related to the influence of genetic factors. That means you will become more and more like your parents.
Your parents will also become more and more like their parents.
The older you get, the more this happens. When I was little, I was the least like it. This matter, it's completely counterintuitive. Because the longer we live,
logically speaking, the greater the impact on the environment. It should be closer to the environment.
But that's not true.
It's with age.
We are getting closer. Own genes.
The impact of environmental factors is getting smaller and smaller.
Then will you become your parents? A combination of my parents.
It's just becoming more and more like what I should have been like.
So when you get married, it makes sense to look at the other person's parents. Very important. Just say that this guy will be like that from now on. If it is inherited. In fact, it is theoretically possible to inherit. But
this one involves the question of whether or not the genes will be turned on. It will show when it is opened.
It sometimes changes due to some environmental factors.
And it suddenly opens.
You will suddenly show this characteristic. This is how our natural changes, just before puberty. Let's just say probably before I was a teenager. Our IQ is only affected by genetics by about 50%. The environmental impact is very large.
Around puberty,
genetic characteristics will show up quickly.
And with age,
genetic characteristics will become more and more obvious. This is why many children, when they are young,
I didn't study well before I was more than 10 years old.
Silly look. But when I hit puberty, I suddenly felt like I was enlightened. Like a different person. Academic performance has improved significantly.
There are also some children.
It's especially good to study before you're a teenager.
But when you reach puberty, it won't work indirectly.
This also happens.
All because during adolescence,
genetic factors suddenly take over.
It all depends on your parents. I won't watch this kid try hard again. I saw someone online a few days ago
talk about the child he gave birth to.
Completely different from adopted children.
When I was little,
adopted children will be similar to your own children.
You just give them the same environment. But once you reach puberty, it will be different soon. this child will become like his parents.
In other words, children before they reach their teens.
His academic performance, mainly affected by the environment.
So when I was young, my family environment was good.
Parents are more enthusiastic about education. Usually children's academic performance will be better. And after puberty, it's different. Genetic shackles are unlocked.
The fight is no longer about the family environment.
It's genes, children with good genes. For example, children whose parents are both smart. His academic performance will suddenly improve by leaps and bounds. Or sudden sports results. Very good at playing basketball and football. Not all children reach puberty. They will suddenly become very good at learning.
It depends on his genes.
And after puberty,
suddenly enlightened child.
He is a child who studies well. His grades will generally no longer decline. Because the genes have not changed much. As long as there is no sudden change in the family environment. No problem, so they say. Adolescent objects affect learning. In fact, it's not caused by love. Unless you are in love.
As a result, you won't even be able to go to school.
No chance to get in touch with knowledge anymore. You may be affected, but you should be a smart person.
He will always be a smart man. And as we grow older,
you will get smarter and smarter.
Getting closer and closer to your genes.
And the effect of hard work will become smaller and smaller.
Why is it useless for people to work hard after they reach middle age?
That's because effort no longer changes any of your original qualities, completely determined by genes.
And if a child suddenly regresses in learning during adolescence, it's not because he doesn't work hard enough.
It's because his genes may be in other fields.
Parents should pay attention at this time.
Should we look for him elsewhere? Are you more talented or something like that?
So many parents don't understand.
Said that our children studied so well when they were young.
Why can't it be done in junior high school?
Is it because the teacher can do it?
This school is not good. Actually not. He can't do it himself.
But this child once studied well. Just show.
He actually has the gene for hard work.
That is to say,
there is a possibility that he will work hard elsewhere.
Just some people,
even if he doesn't study hard. It is also possible that he is particularly professional in playing games. There will be something he is particularly good at.
It's especially easy to work hard in his field. Very easy to get results. One more thing. It's because IQ is unlocked during adolescence.
Therefore, in principle, education after puberty.
It doesn't have a big impact on people's performance. In other words, there may be some opportunities in junior high school.
But after high school, I worked hard to make up classes. It's actually useless to find a good teacher.
Unless the teacher knows the test questions. Once you study well, you don't need to take extra classes at all.
How well does a child learn?
In fact, it all has something to do with parents.
When I was young,
look at parents' educational attitude.
Are you enthusiastic about the education of this child? And after junior high school, it all depends on the parents' genes. And if your child studies well, you don't need to give special thanks.
Just thank yourselves. On the other hand, if your child doesn't study well, don't be too disappointed. Don't blame him. Just blame yourselves. But the real world is often not like this. That is, if the child does not study well, this teacher blames the parents.
The parents blame this child. You don't even try hard. In fact, it has nothing to do with this child. IQ.
In fact, the same environmental factors as this are very large. Let's talk about IQ.
Although a large part of it is determined by genetics, but the environment part, it can also be divided into two types, same environment and different environment. The same environment says that you are with good classmates. Will your IQ level improve?
One environment theory.
Your environment is completely different from others. Is it more beneficial to you?
The exertion of this ability.
In fact, different environments have little impact on IQ.
Great impact on the environment. That is to say,
if you put this child next to good classmates,
his IQ will improve.
Although the improvement will not be much.
But there is improvement. Then put him in a separate environment. Better.
Well, it is precisely because 80% of IQ is determined by genetics. Therefore, it creates a fairer educational environment. In fact, it will lead to an even more unfair gap. True fairness does not exist.
We want to be in this world. If you want a better survival, you need to understand this.
If everyone's factory settings are the same.
That's fair.
Yes, but we are not robots.
There is no way to keep the factory settings the same.
And we are unfair. It is for the entire human species to reproduce. Developed. That is, everyone will have their own areas of expertise.
Not to the point of destruction.
It's unfair to the reason why it's reflected now.
It's because we deliberately created this environment. Added a fair educational opportunity. Is it correct that we must learn mathematics, physics and chemistry? But some people's specialty is not in mathematics, physics and chemistry.
Why do you force him to study mathematics, physics and chemistry?
That is, everyone in any subtle field.
Everyone has a chance to play. About IQ. There is another very important thing. There is a book. It's called The Battle of the Soul.
It is based on the American 1970 seconds. It was obtained by conducting large-scale IQ test data. The author is a famous German psychologist,
world authority on IQ research,
Hans Eysenck, and the famous American psychologist Leon Carmin.
They both wrote it, published in 1981.
Male and female intelligence.
There is no difference, all around 100. There is no saying that boys are smarter than girls, but men and women.
The distribution of IQ is different. The distribution of men is relatively even.
There are quite a few people of all IQ levels. And women. Relative comparisons are concentrated at the intermediate level.
Women are pretty normal, and men. Even there is a lot of cleverness.
But there are also a lot of fools. A big thing happened in 2005.
That's the former president of Harvard.
Well-known American economist and statistical analysis expert. Clinton Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers. I accidentally said something during a speech. He said there was data that showed,
in high-end mathematics and scientific research, women are inferior to men.
There is data to support what he said.
That is in the field of high IQ.
There are more men than women.
But because of this sentence, suspected of sexism. In the end, Summers resigned as president of Harvard.
His words also caused a lot of controversy.
His original intention was not to target women.
As an expert in statistical analysis, he
just stating a fact.
It's just that his explanation is incomplete.
He didn't say,
men are more stupid.
If he finishes saying this, maybe there won't be this problem anymore. This is standard and scientifically correct.
But politically incorrect. There are many such things.
However, this statistics is not comprehensive. Just the people he counted. The result of large-scale data statistics.
It is representative to a certain extent.
And they did find out.
It is in this advanced scientific research field that there are still mostly men.
In fact, it has this characteristic.
But it still needs to be emphasized. There are also more stupid ones. Then it also proves the IQ of most women.
Comparison based on average, and men.
Dispersion is serious. So men and women behave completely differently in life. Men are usually unwilling to admit that they are mediocre. And women, I really don't want to be special.
For example,
if a girl is tall,
he wears flat shoes whenever possible.
Make yourself look not so tall. Men are different. When reporting your height, if you can say 1 centimeter more, say 1 centimeter more. Then he will pursue the high one, the IQ part. He will only pursue the excellent quality. And women
is pursuing average. What boys are most afraid of is that they are of average height.
I can't go ordinary. I must be 1 centimeter taller than you. A bit higher than normal.
Women relatively prefer a stable life, and men
like exciting life.
What they pursue is instability.
It is precisely because of this.
Male suicide rate is higher because
they are constantly pursuing a higher standard.
This is more difficult.
And women, pursuit of average,
relatively easy to implement.
So women are less likely to commit suicide.
Relatively speaking, men.
It is less easy for me to accept the reality of myself.
Woman, once you show that you are different from others,
will be isolated.
Women are particularly afraid of being isolated. Men are particularly afraid of hanging out with a bunch of mediocre people. He showed that he was different, hated. Men must show that they are different. The house I live in is bigger. It would be better if I drove a car. That's the way it is.
Because he wants to show that he is different from other men. Only then can we attract more members of the opposite sex. Women want stability. I hope this male will not fight. So you think?
It's important to live a good life.
It is more important to survive and reproduce.
So, women are actually more important to human reproduction.
Male is for him to develop,
constantly improving.
There is another one that is actually completely politically incorrect.
But the scientifically correct thing.
It's actually IQ. There is a racial difference. In 1994,
Charles Murray published a book called The Bell Curve.
This book caused great controversy.
But the data cited in this book is objective, he mentioned in his book.
The average IQ of white people is higher than that of black people.
In fact, this data was not proposed by white people. It was brought up by black people, black activists in the 1970s. At that time, I took out a picture
saying that we black people do not receive fair educational opportunities.
You see, our IQs are usually lower than yours. It's because our environment is particularly bad. You need to improve our environment.
Later, in 1994, when you took out this picture,
they quit.
You are insulting us black people.
But it's not. Just say that after so many years, I tested again. Still the same result. What about the yellow people?
Yellow people are taller than white people.
And this yellow man is the so-called Asian. It's not that we're doing very well in China. Go to the United States. I am an Asian who grew up in the United States.
Their academic performance is better than others.
Those at the top of major prestigious universities are generally Asians. So in fact, some people have normal IQs.
But as long as you say a few words, it's politically incorrect. Although black people have low IQs.
But physically strong. The things you are good at are different. We have to emphasize this sentence. How can you use your IQ alone? Who has thicker arms than a black man?
How can it be done, right?
Even if black people don't do anything. All muscles. Are you envious?
So let's talk about IQ.
Let's take a look at the character.
Heritability of personality. It's 40% to 60%.
Heritability of personality.
Not as high as IQ.
In other words, his plasticity.
There are still some. But one thing is the same about personality and IQ. They are all shaped after puberty. Character that manifests itself before puberty.
In fact, it won't be his lifelong personality. On the other hand,
it is the role of adolescence in shaping a child's character.
Very important.
Once during this period,
if the character creation is not perfect, it may affect him for the rest of his life.
You can think about it.
What did we do when we were teenagers?
Are you all studying hard? Therefore, Asians tend to be more serious when they grow up.
Rather boring. This is relatively common.
All formed when I was in school.
Sometimes you don't pay attention to forming your character.
Daily military management and the like.
What time do you go to school every day?
When is school end? As a result, when I go to work later.
It's basically like this. The correct way to train people is from a young age.
Before puberty.
Carry out more IQ development. At this time, genetic influence is not very big. And after puberty,
parents should stop investing in learning. Instead, we should pay more attention to the development of children's character. Let him become a person with relatively positive views.
After all, the heritability of personality is only about 50%. Plasticity is very high, even if the parents are not very good in character.
There is also the possibility that the child has a good personality.
Worst case scenario.
It's when the children were young. His parents didn't raise him very much.
Don't care about him. Reached adolescence.
Parents are having a big divorce.
This child,
whether it's IQ development or not,
character development is also good.
None are guaranteed.
This is the worst case scenario. The worst thing that can happen is that the parents make a fuss and then don't get divorced. Make trouble every day, make trouble every day. So as a child grows up, parents always have something to do. Just don't do the wrong thing at the wrong time. You should be responsible for his studies when he is young. Grow up a little, reached puberty. You must be responsible for cultivating his character. Just stop caring about his study problems. The rest is up to him.
So Ivy finished talking about some of the inner IQ and personality.
Let's talk about it next. Body part. Heritability of height is 66%. The heritability of weight is 88%. So it's really not that fat people don't work hard. It's not that they are greedy. The influence of genes is too great. He wants to lose weight.
More than 100 times more difficult than ordinary people.
On the contrary, it is because some people are in good shape. It's not that they're very determined, but their genes are very good.
They don't need to work too hard.
You can maintain this figure. But now society generally doesn't think so.
Many people think that being fat means being lazy.
Just greedy. And being thin means that he works hard and has perseverance. Actually, this is a mistake. Weight is mostly caused by genetic influences. It's different from personal efforts.
Does your weight resemble that of your father or mother?
All have a comprehensive impact on the results. So we must not take people's appearance associated with his character.
Nor can one's salary be
linked to his ability.
This is a prejudice. Besides,
some diseases are currently known.
It's also hereditary.
For example, hereditary diseases are inherited. Heritability is about 50. What genetic disease? All genetic diseases. In fact, it is a principle.
So now that we know that genetic diseases are hereditary,
we can effectively prevent it. For example, if your parents are genetically alcoholic, that child, we should not be exposed to alcohol since childhood. Losing alcohol, it's not that.
He didn't know what wine was.
He would want to drink,
but he becomes addicted as soon as he drinks it.
So it is most important to keep him away from alcohol.
Heredity actually means that you will inherit it once you encounter it. If you don't encounter it, you won't inherit it. So now that we know that heredity is hereditary,
we can prevent it.
There are also many mental illnesses. It's hereditary, and it is currently known.
The more severe the mental illness, the more likely it is to be inherited. The higher the heritability. For example, the heritability of schizophrenia.
Reach 82%. Bipolar disorder, also called manic depression.
Heritability 83%.
There is also the current concern. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. In children, a very common disease.
Heritability 80%. This was not considered a disease before.
If this is a disease like inheritance.
In fact, there is no good way. Just pay more attention.
Early detection and early treatment.
So among all the talents,
musical talent has the highest heritability.
Heritability reaches 92%. Just say that if your parents have musical talent, the child is likely to be gifted.
Then you may have another question.
What has a relatively low heritability?
In fact, 50% is considered relatively low. There are also those with lower heritability. It's an acquired habit.
Heritability is very low.
For example, you were originally left-handed. Later, he was forced to become right-handed.
This is less likely to be inherited. More likely to inherit your left-handed tendencies. So at the end of today, let's talk about a very cruel reality. Just like the book we just introduced. The title of the book is called Unable to Tell.
Because reality is too cruel.
Why is reality so cruel? Even though we just talked about all the attributes of human beings.
They are all shaped by genetics plus environment.
But basically, the influence of environment is only based on genetics.
It's just a manifestation of heredity. Sculpture the obvious and the unobvious.
And its impact is often short-term. For example, there is someone.
He has the trait of being genetically fat. You can lock him somewhere.
Won't feed him.
It's okay to starve him to a bone.
But this doesn't change his genes. Finally, once he gets something to eat, will still become fat. So hard work cannot defeat heredity in the end. Whether it's a geneticist or a best-selling author, all came to this conclusion. Even hard work cannot defeat genetics. Life is fundamentally determined by genetics.
He set our foundation.
Effort.
He can only be modified and carved in various ways.
Success in our life.
Actually, there are two.
Composed of factors.
One is the gene. One is to work hard. But these two factors are not additive. It is a multiplicative relationship.
And work hard. Divided into 5 levels. First gear to 5th gear. Genes are only divided into 3 levels. 0, 1, and 3.
0 means no talent. 1 is an ordinary person. 3 is genius. If you have no talent, 0.
No matter how hard you try, it can only be 0 forever.
If you are an ordinary person, it is 1. Then you would get as much as you work hard, 1 minus 5. And if you are a genius,
you don't work hard at all.
You will also get a result of 3. Try harder. It exceeds the efforts of ordinary people. That result is 6. It's more than 5.
People's time is fair. If you waste this time, you will have none.
If we want to give everyone a chance,
it means teaching students in accordance with their aptitude. Educate him according to his characteristics.
Can't give everyone a fair educational opportunity, because fair educational opportunities are actually the most unfair.